The Biden administration plans to investigate Southwest's rate of cancellations and delays over the holiday. The airline canceled thousands of flights the past few days, more than 2,500 a day for each of the last 3 days. Did weather really breed the perfect storm? Was there clear negligence? And how do you fix this situation? Well, the president of the K2 Security Screening Group and former deputy director of field operations at TSA headquarters, Keith Jeffries, back with us this morning. Good morning, Keith. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Steve.
You spent a lot of time at airports in your life. Have you seen anything like this?
Well, I certainly have, and obviously the weather has had a negative impact, but there's certainly more to this, as we all know. The employee scheduling system appears to have gone down, which has created a lot of confusion. But I will say this, that the safety of the passengers is the number one most important concern for every airline. So the good news is the skies are safe, but we've got to do a better job of certainly getting the passengers to their destination.
Spoken like a true security pro. Here's the thing, though. You spent a lot of time serving our military. Thank you for that. You spent a lot of time protecting the airports and the ports, especially on the West Coast. You seem like a person who appreciates efficiency. This is not an efficient situation. Southwest has to go a long way to fix this. Can they do it? And how do you do that without alienating future customers?
Yeah, great question, Steve. You know, this obviously Southwest has a serious public relations nightmare on their hands, and they could have done a better job of getting in front of this and communicating to the public. I've heard reports that many of the passengers traveling had no idea what was going on, didn't know when they could rebook their flight, and all of those things. These are minor things that could have been corrected. I certainly think that, as consumers, passengers have a choice of the airline they can choose. So, maybe they vote with their wallets on who they choose to fly with the next time for the next holiday season. But certainly there's a lot of cleaning up to do. And I'm thrilled to hear that certainly the Department of Transportation is investigating this. So that's good.
Well, I know from a security standpoint, the last thing you want is angry air travelers, right? Because you want people to be in a good mood getting to their destinations. I have a security question for you. And I know that you've worked hard over the years with TSA to implement the strongest security measures you can for folks getting to the gates and getting to their destination. All of this luggage, though, that's being left behind in airports across the country, is there anything that you can do about that situation to keep people from just walking off with somebody else's luggage or any issues that might arise from just so many abandoned bags across the country?
Yeah, so the abandoned bag, another great question. The abandoned bags that are on the non-sterile side, which is a pre-security checkpoint, the local law enforcement and airport partners do a great job of working towards that. That's why you'll see the canine presence out there quite a bit for those unattended bags. On the sterile side, it's not as often. It does occur, but remember, those bags on the side, the back side of the security checkpoint have already been screened, so it's a less security threat at that point.
All right, I guess then it's just the honor system, right, to make sure somebody doesn't come in and walk off with the bag that should be yours whenever you find out which airport it's at and can get there and get it.
Absolutely.
All right. Listen, here's the question, and you mentioned people, obviously, flyers have the option to choose whichever airlines they want. Maybe that changes now in the future. Maybe it doesn't. But as far as just what you should know in advance, flying over the holidays, and you've been there enough times that you've seen the ebbs and flows of the volume of passengers, have we learned anything from this? Can we take anything from this that can benefit all flyers in the future?
Oh, I certainly think so. I think that the first thing that all travelers, especially around the holiday season, you should have a contingency plan, right? What happens if your flight is canceled? What's your backup plan to get to your next destination? I think that's important. Consider having the insurance as well associated with getting a refundable ticket. Make sure you read that fine print. And of course, most importantly, Steve, we've got to be patient. It's a very stressful time. A lot of folks are anxious to get home. Just be patient. And it creates a lot of stress and strain when we have these kind of long lines and or cancellations at airports, airlines, and for the passengers and security personnel.
I have to ask you, former deputy director at TSA, you've been part of the higher-ups at the federal level. You've certainly worked with many partnerships at the federal level. Does the federal government stay on top of this with the investigation of Southwest? Does Secretary Buttigieg, come in hard on this? What do you think is going to happen as far as the federal oversight here?
Well, certainly they'll find out. I think you asked the question, what are we going to do to avoid this in the future? What do we need to know? And how come it took so long to get this information into the hands of the traveling public? Communication is critical, and we need to make sure that information gets out into the hands of both the employees and the passengers to help de-escalate the stress that these delays have created at airports across the country.
Yeah, listen, and I know this isn't your area of expertise, but even if they said, based on the guidelines the government passed, and said, listen, you got to refund these tickets or whatever it falls under those guidelines. You got people that might miss work for a week. You have people that might have missed cruises that were their connections, or birthday parties or Christmas or weddings. Can you do anything to remedy any of those losses?
Yeah, that's another great question, Steve. I tell you, as I said earlier, it's a public relations nightmare for Southwest. I'm certain that their senior leadership is probably working through that. How do you make those passengers whole that have certainly experienced, just as you described, missing a week's worth of work, missing that holiday season? These are all great questions that I just don't have the answers for.
Well, hopefully we'll be getting them from somebody in the near future, and that'll ease the minds of a lot of weary travelers these days. I really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for joining us, former Deputy Director of Field Operations at TSA Headquarters, Keith Jeffries. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Steve. Happy New Year.
You as well.